So, welcome everybody for this week's interchange uh, for the progress between first half of April. The agenda, we have only two nominated topics, one by myself and Matt mentioned to talk about the WISC deploy 0.93 release. In addition, there are a couple of other areas listed down in the agenda. So we can first start with the introduction of any new attendees who have joined and want to present themselves.
Hi Chetan and hello everyone. So I'm Neeraj Mangal and I work in Adobe, and we started using OpenWhisk for our internal use 6 months back, and we are using it mostly for reducing the server TCOs and other internal applications. Also, I'm looking forward to be a contributor in a future. So that's all.
Welcome, Neeraj. Just to clarify, so this is separate from the Adobe IO runtime work. So this is a separate project being worked on Adobe. Anybody else?
Yeah, hi. My name is William. I'm from Red Hat. I'm a product manager here for our serverless efforts, and I'm happy to participate and join the community. So I'd like to see how can I help on the community. So I'm now joining the meetings here, and I'm monitoring the mailing list as well more closely, so I can understand what's going on. Happy to join.
Welcome, William. Okay, anybody else for the introductions? Okay, so as the first item, next item is the status updates in few areas from what I can make out of the pull request. If there are any other updates which you should include, just speak out. So the Gatling performance suite is now part of the core repo, and there's a build matrix for the core repo where it is basic working is tested. The performance suite is obviously not being run on Travis, but yeah, its functionality being tested. I saw the Elasticsearch log store pull request getting merged. So now I believe one can configure a log, the ELK stack for storing logs. In runtime Java, there is some progress on switch to adopt OpenJDK, OpenJ9 VM for the Java runtime, which should significantly reduce the size and bring other benefits. I think this is still under review and should be merged soon going forward. And Mesos, the project bootstrap is done. The initial code is now checked into the GitHub repo, and yeah, it's actively being worked upon. CLI tests are now moved to CLI repo. So that's basics, sanity work being done. Any other updates which people want to share? And any other repo? Probably the deploy thing we can bit specifically talk a bit later, but any other repo which people want to share any updates upon?
I think that the one, I don't know if Matt wants to summarize, but for the last 2 weeks, I've seen a lot of activity in the WISC deploy repo, a lot of fixes on some features. Going into that one. And then for the CLI repo, well, I don't know if Matt wants to talk about WISC deploy or maybe highlight some of the changes.
Yeah, I think I'm on the agenda later.
Oh, okay. So we're going through significant changes in general?
Yeah, going through significant changes in it.
Let me see. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but Chetan helped a lot with the Maven jar files. Maybe not everyone is aware. but we went through a lot of repos um, to basically it's a nice way it was done. The repos that depend on some testing classes or testing libraries from the core repo, now instead of like requiring to use the source and compile and recompile everything in one thing, it uses Maven dependencies. So they were refactored to do that step in the Gradle to depend to run the Gradle install on the core repo that would install the Maven jar files in your home local Maven, and then it's easier to manage and move through the tests and run IntelliJ and all that stuff. So that was very helpful, but was a lot of repos. But now we can move faster on doing changes and have the dependencies through Maven. So that's around build and testing. And then the next thing that I would like to land, is there's progress in there, is called coverage. So we just need to nail down like one last minor bug that we see that we cannot compile, but that will also accelerate productivity for contributors. So that's for the main cluster repos. The CLI, an API gateway got a recent update. Mark Dusser from my team worked on that, basically to have so web actions can have an annotation where a user can add a, maybe we can discuss it in the next meeting. I have a demo, but overall it landed. It's an annotation on web actions. It was there before, but it was only a Boolean. But now you can put a string or a number, and that becomes an API key. So once you put that annotation on the web action, only can be called by an HTTP request that contains a header with that API key. So it's kind of locking it down with an API key, where before it was just plain open by default, or basically that annotation being true, meaning like only a WIS user can call it with a WIS API key. So that helped a lot with the API gateway integration. Now the API gateway integration can call it with that API key. And that was mostly a CLI change. I think a little bit of an API gateway. I think they already supported like passing header, so that's mostly the Swagger and the CLI. I think that's it. I cannot recall from the last 2 weeks. Didn't do my homework this time.
Okay, so probably we can move to the next agenda item then. Areas of concern, not as such a concern in terms of big, but yeah, these issues being popped up. So one area I'm seeing is the current Vagrant setup is posing problems for newcomers, new users who are trying to use, because it's pulling in the newest Docker version. Somehow the Docker pinning, which was done earlier, is not working, which needs to be looked into. And some of our team members internally, when they try to use this, the Vagrant image, they face the memory problem. Basically, it's a 10 GB box by default, the Ubuntu box that it uses. And with all our Docker images, it's only having left around like 200 MB. And if you let the Vagrant run for like 2-3 days, you end up with out of disk. So that poses a problem. So probably we need to look into it and see how probably we can increase the size of the box, or so that's one area of concern. And yeah, probably we should have a build matrix entry for the Vagrant build also, so that a basic sanity can be tested going forward. So this is an area where we probably have to focus some bandwidth upon.
Yeah. So the Vagrant workflow, we need to, there's a few items that can be improved. For the size, disk size, I think I briefly look, and it looks like the image, it recently got updated to Ubuntu 16, so that's a good thing. And also it got updated to use the latest Docker version that comes with Ubuntu 16, I believe. I'm trying to think if we pin it to 1.12 or just say latest. In terms of disk, one proposal could be, yeah, it's debatable. Because I think that somebody put like the image comes with this size, and we have to extend it and resize it, and it's a pain. So easy proposal would be just configure it to build the Node.js image, a Docker image, and not build the other ones. Maybe that would cut the size, and we don't have to size and the speed of the build. We don't have to create the image, download and tag the image for Swift, for Java, for all those images, and then you have more space. And if you want to do something with any of them or one of them, you can just build it and just use it.
That would be good. The Swift images are total taking 3 GBs, I think. So
yeah,
even just getting rid of the Swift images, we can save.
And I think we double dip. I think we do the Swift 3 and Swift 4.
Yeah.
So that should be an easy fix. That should be somebody can open one specific. Well, yeah, we can discuss it in the disk. If somebody opens the disk out of this one, that could be a proposal we can put. I can put it there if I can find it. Other one is open an issue is around documentation, and some people want to use the Vagrant from outside their system. So right now, I believe it just does the default, like downloads the CLI and uses the Linux one and puts the Linux in the bin folder. But if you want to like use it from your Mac or Windows, you don't have the CLI. So I was thinking maybe switching that to, instead of downloading, and I think Jonathan fixed all those things related to switching to the mode in Ansible to build it from source. So that way you get build it from source, or just do some shell scripting to download all the versions, so a user can just do Vagrant and then call it from that side and update the documentation a little bit. That's something I think somebody brought up. I said that we should help with that. Latest Docker version, I don't think there should be problems with latest Docker version. I'm interested in that one.
The problems I think are in the directory structure where it is looking up the logs. I think a couple of problems have been reported, 2 or 3 different variety. So yeah, it might be good to give a try with the 18th version and see how it works. The Travis builds with the older version, so we don't have a coverage with the newer Docker version.
Yeah, so let's if it's not open, please open an issue on what are the problems with using the latest version, because I'm interested. I use Docker for Mac, so I'm always updating to the latest version, and I don't see problems with using the latest version of Docker. And we build it. Go ahead.
Carlos, you might not notice, because one of the issues is the unavailability of runC. So unless you're paying attention to warm starts, you might not actually notice that something under the covers is broken.
We put runC client in the Docker image, and then when it's the miscompatibility of the API, runC against the API. I see.
Yeah, right. It's issue number 3.
So we're going to use runC. Maybe you switch to Docker.
Yeah, I think that's one option. That might be the easiest option, is for Vagrant different deployment. There was a pull request, maybe it's from you, Dan. I can't remember who did it, that factored out the path for runC somewhere. I couldn't find it against the main repo, so it might have been in one of the other repos.
Yeah, I think it's in the tools one where the Docker setup is. So it's in the
Docker Compose?
Yeah, I think I tried to factor all of that stuff out so that you could kind of detect what you had and what you didn't, and then set up accordingly. So you might be able to check there. Let me go see if I can find that commit.
Right. We could try to do the same, which would allow us to move to newer Docker, at least for local development. Might be convenient for others.
Let me go see if I can find it.
Thanks.
No worries.
So we can actually use runC with the latest version, or not use it? I got confused in the last part.
All my thing did is detect to see if you even had runC, and then wouldn't use runC if you didn't actually have it. So if you had it, it would use it, but I think this would solve that problem, it sounds like. Although I'm really unfamiliar with the Vagrant stuff, I never use it. So
it's Ubuntu, the Linux thing. And then and then the last thing was the matrix of testing Vagrant. I think there was an old issue from Dominic, or I can dig it out, or maybe Roderick already by this time already dig it out. It was around the file system type, or the file system driver for Docker, that maybe needs to be changed or updated, something along those lines. That that time we were not able to test Vagrant in Travis, but I wanted to see if we can give it another try. And at that time, I didn't know about matrices in Travis, so I didn't know that we were able to run like 2 50-minute test pipelines at the same time. So that will be a good thing to have. Like we can have a Travis that both are running for 50 minutes. One is testing Ansible, deploy and test, and then the other one is testing Vagrant. But yeah, if somebody wants to give it a try to see how to configure Vagrant in Travis, and test it and see if it can be installed, we can work together on that. And then debate if we use that environment local, or we just create we've been debating for a long time. Just create an environment / Vagrant. Since if we have the test, I feel confident that it's okay to have. I feel confident that we can have environment Vagrant, environment local in Ansible. Since they're tested, we don't lose anything. Right now we use environment local, so just we can piggyback of what we do in Ubuntu Linux Travis. Let me see. Yeah, so since we are in the topic of matrices and Travis, I had a conversation with Matt on coverage and testing in core. If you're not aware, in Travis, we don't run all the tests that are sitting in the core repo. We just run a portion. So one idea that I had, like literally this morning, was maybe we use abuse or use the Travis matrices, and maybe we use one matrix to test a portion of the tests and another matrix to test another portion of the tests. So the tests are not running today, they can be run on a parallel matrix. The thing is, I have not experience with Travis and matrices on how they work, but if they work as advertised from some folks, then I don't see a problem. If you get a different VM for every matrix pipeline, and then test, let's say runtime tests in one, core test in another one, stress test in another one.
I think I suggested we look at creating different test suites for different purposes that we need. And I think that I think we need to have that as part of our release work, and we need to have it as part of our when you submit a PR, we should have an option, like a checklist that says which test suite should be run based upon the reviewer. Reviewers can ask for a test suite to be run. We need to work towards that.
Well, if a PR comes in and it doesn't, it will take 15 minutes anyway. Just run all the tests. There's nothing picking.
Yeah, and I know Vincent has done so with parallelization, so he can work on that eventually if we can identify the test suites. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think using the Travis matrix to run the full suite by breaking them down would be a good option for that.
So the way
that's what we do in IBM. We use Gradle tasks, and we define this Gradle task includes X, Y, and Z, and this other Gradle task includes A, B, C, and excludes this other one. So like, I don't know. That's how we do it. I don't know if that's the right way, or maybe it's a different way.
Yeah, I was going to just add that the way Travis matrices works is that for every PR, instead of having one build, you have 2 or more. So it's like they can be executed in parallel depending on how many parallel allowance we have.
Yeah, and that's
what you get a clean VM on each one.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
I think
so build, deploy, deploy, and run the test suite. Okay.
And that's what Vincent did in the release repo. So when we do the release tests, the build verification tests, we do that. So.
Okay, so he's running all the tests right now, so we can.
I don't know if they're all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and since we're here, something interesting for us to think about is Cube and Mesos deployments as well. We were thinking how, now that we published the first version of the Mesos installation scripts, how would we automate the testing? And I'm sure Cube has the same issue. So it's just something to think about. I don't think we have an option right now in Vagrant. but just something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, for them, I think maybe instead of running them in part of matrix, we can have like a separate job which runs once in a day, so that we get the coverage, and if it breaks, we at least know within a day that things are not working. If we can get it part of matrix, that would be cool, but I'm not sure how much parallel we can go.
Yeah, Travis also has the schedule builds. I believe I enable all the runtimes to run at least once a day.
Yeah.
And then it will tell us in Slack if something's broken.
Yeah, we have made that recommendation a couple months ago on this call that all the ones we do for all release repos should once run a day master, built once a night with all the tests that we don't typically run.
Trying to remember if I enable DevTools on Cube, but Cube is using Minikube, so that's the answer for Minikube, I guess, in terms of functional tests, right?
There is a Dragos, there is a Travis matrix for Cube already. It's testing at least, I think, 2 different versions and some other things that Dave Rowe had done.
Okay, so that he got that in on the factories, the 2 using the 2 factories. I think he was going to work on that. I don't know if it landed, but yeah, that'll be matrices on the Cube repo. And for Mesos, what's the state right now? Mesos, I think Dragos, you created a repo, right?
Yeah, so I merged yesterday some changes proposed by Dewey, and that's pretty much in line with what we got a little bit run. I'd say pretty much. It's not exactly the same. So we're worried, like we would like to run the same thing, but there is a problem with DCOS 1.11 that's preventing us, and we're working with Mesosphere to fix it. But definitely the intent is to automate that and have Adobe also deploy from that same repo.
Oh, okay. And it's enabled. Can you have some testing in Travis? I don't know anything about running Mesos in Travis.
So Tyson tried something with something like a mini Mesos locally, and probably we're going to try to replicate that in Travis.
Okay.
Okay, so I think for the Vagrant, we can follow up on the issues itself and see how we can create an umbrella issue and then link whatever tasks we want to target for that, and then people can pick it up. Okay, so moving to the next. So last meeting we discussed this thing, what, how, and why of various install options of OpenWhisk. I think we have enumerated all them, quite a few links in a couple of issues, 2 issues, one in website and one in core repo, but I'm not sure if we made any further progress there or how we want to take it further. This was the issue, 255 in website, which was open based on the discussion where people are getting confused on how to run OpenWhisk in a cluster environment easily.
Yeah, I think for that, before we update the website, I think we need to work on the actual functions. Like for example, if Vagrant is sick right now, it has a lot of issues. I don't want to advertise people to use Vagrant. If the Docker Compose is not being tested on every commit, I think Doug was thinking last night on updating the Jenkins file so it can fire the Travis build in Docker Compose every time we publish a new image. Then we'll have people like it breaks sometimes, and then we have people asking why does it break, and we don't know why, or which commit broke it. So yeah, Dragos, I think, wanted to work on that. So it's a matter of adding at the end of the Jenkins, when we publish the image to call. I was looking that night. You can call Travis with a HTTP post and then trigger the Travis for Docker Compose, and that would tell us in Slack if that commit broke. The Docker Compose, I guess we can trigger the cube, right? Now I'm thinking about it. Like
that would be a great
Jenkins,
idea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we know for sure. And then the docs, like I think the Vagrant docs are a little bit stale. I would like to Now with Docker for Mac, a lot of people have Macs. I don't, not that I don't like. I don't use Vagrant. I just use Whisk Fresh. I'm ready to go because I have Docker for Mac, and I'm on the things that I'm working on are functional tests. I'm not testing run C or low level things. So I'm just concentrating more on runtimes, user experience type of things, DevOps type of things. So it's good for me. Probably maybe good for other folks. Yeah, so we have to go through all the different installation methods and make sure they are well documented and well tested, and then we can talk about the website. Where do we drive people, depending what they're looking for. This is without discussing like local development, like developers that don't want to install Whisk, that they should not be installing Whisk. I'm telling developers, you should not install Whisk. I think what they're looking for is something that they can easily test their Node.js function or the Swift function with something like a Docker run OpenWhisk local. Here's a JavaScript file, run it. You don't have to install Whisk to run a JavaScript file or a Java file. So we have some of that in the dev tools with no local and Node, no local, Java local. So it's a progression. So once we have a little bit of that installation nailed down for Docker for Mac and Vagrant, I think we can start doing the website work. It's not all or nothing.
Sure. So I think for the next immediate future, we can focus on the Vagrant and the Docker Compose, because they are the first entry points people mostly use to get a feel of fully working OpenWhisk, and we get that healthy and back at
for Docker Compose. Any objections to Adobe or maybe Dragos of switching to the OpenWhisk API gateway? I think there was an issue open, and that's why sometimes I don't recommend Docker Compose, because people ask like, how do I do an API gateway or Whisk API? And like, you cannot do it. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll follow up. I actually have a story to work on the next 2 weeks, and I'll follow up on that. Yeah.
Okay. It's just that if it's okay to replace it, it's just a replace, right? It's just launching Redis on API gateway. Should be ready to go. But I didn't want to do it because I know it was using Marathon or something like that. I didn't want to break it, so you guys were depending on that. Or if we wanted to have like a toggle to switch, we can discuss it in the.
I think I think ideally Carlos would be to unify them both, and I was actually planning to work on this. There is an alternative implementation that we're following at Adobe, something that we have been using for years successfully. When you configure an API, instead of storing that information in Redis, we have a Swagger converter into an Nginx configuration, so it's more static. So I was thinking to make this implementation, since we're using it at Adobe, bring it back into OpenWhisk, and so that everybody can look at it. And then maybe provide an option for people that want to use the Redis as a storage or versus the configuration files. We use config files because it's easier to manage them and to operate versus Redis.
Yeah, very interesting. Now my head is spinning around Cube and Ingress. Okay, we can take that.
But if one thing about the installing, would not be the case to create a separate project that something OpenWhisk is set up where you collect all the things and you have one central point where you can do collect all the effort for the installing, because the problem is that everything is spread around, and probably having a single project for that can be useful. At least to know where to put your hands, because at this stage I have no idea where to start and would like to help in improving the installer. Okay, you got what you said? What I said?
Yes, I think. So currently the core repo, I think, is the first entry point people land. And there the Vagrant is one of the proposed way to get hands dirty without any hassle on either Windows or Mac also. So probably we can have links there and still links to other repos. having another repo to collect stuff, because the stuff is anyway distributed across various repos, so they would continue to live like that. So, but what we can do is improve the documentation in the main repo, where as discussed in that what, how, and why, like you are trying it first as a persona that you are a end user just trying out, then follow this. And if you are a persona which is trying to follow, like deploy it on a production kind of setup, then you have this option of either Cube or the Kubernetes or the Mesos way. So I think from with documentation, we can address that, Michael.
Well, I think I'm still convinced that as installer would be useful, because okay, probably we'll just try make an attempt and make proposals. It's okay. Understood. Understood. I want to try something. I stay tuned for a proposal in the next few days when I finish the OpenWhisk Go actions. That's okay.
Okay, so moving on to the next topic is what I would like to talk something about the artifact store enhancements. There are a couple of PRs and branches in progress and waiting for reviews. So I would try to provide some background so people understand what it is being worked upon. Just give me a moment. Okay, so is the presentation visible? Just checking on the yes, now. Are you guys able to see any presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, so talking about the artifact store enhancements, the objective here is in Adobe, we want to deploy OpenWhisk with Cosmos DB as a persistence storage instead of Couch. So the work being done is to enable users of other databases with OpenWhisk in a reliable and supported way. So in addition to the CouchDB artifact store, we should be able to have other artifact stores, and going forward be able to support them in a reliable way with all the future works being done in various areas. Briefly, the work being done is so there's a test suite to validate the artifact store SPI implementation. It's more like a TCK kind of thing. A set of like 30 plus tests which cover all the artifact store SPI contract, the way it is implemented currently with Couch. And so any new artifact store has to like pass this suite, and that would confirm that that artifact store is working and can be used with OpenWhisk setup. There would be an in-memory artifact store implementation, which would serve as a canonical example. So it can be used for unit testing, and it would also serve as a base template to what areas artifact store has to deal with. There's some work being done in attachments by making them immutable, support inlining. There's a new SPI to store attachments, and there's a S3 store implementation to store attachments. Would cover them in next few slides. In parallel, there's a Mongo artifact store implemented as a POC to see what changes are required in the artifact store SPI and how it works. So it's kind of working. Hello World works. The full coverage is still a bit pending. And eventually, we want to implement a Azure Cosmos DB artifact store. So memory artifact store as part of pull request 3517. There's an in-memory implementation as a test suite of tests to validate the contract, as mentioned before. It also provides a base logic to enable mapping the CouchDB view logic to SQLite queries. Like CouchDB is a special, it uses the views, which are more like stored procedures, and the queries are pre-computed instead of evaluated at runtime. Compared to that, other stores like Mongo or Cosmos supports more SQLite constructs where the query can be dynamic. So it provides some base logic to enable that. There's some support to handle the joins. So for subjects authentication, we do a CouchDB join to fetch the limits for a namespace, which is something a bit unique feature of CouchDB. Other stores don't support it like that, or don't have a proper support for such a join. So there's some support implemented for that. And then there's some support for computing the views. Just to give Buzz a brief background on what is the problem here. So on the left side, you see the view for action computation. And on the right side is roughly a kind of a pseudo SQL query that can represent that kind of logic in the CouchDB view JavaScript code. So you map the computed fields as select fields. So that would be like a projected fields, what fields you want to fetch, and then the key in the computed view becomes like the where clause in the SQL query. Then the sorting is handled by the order by. So that gives a rough overview of like what it takes to map the current CouchDB logic into a more other NoSQL stores like Mongo or Azure. So some of the supporting logic is implemented as part of the memory artifact store, which other store implementations can then use. So that was about the memory artifact store. Next is there's this pull request on immutable attachments. So currently the attachments that we have in use only for the Java runtime currently, they are mutable. So you modify the attachment against the same name. This poses problems if you have to use a store like S3 or IBM Cloud Object Store or Azure Blob Store, because they don't support conditional updates. So they are more designed for get input only constructs. So concurrent updates poses a problem. So to enable that kind of storage, and also as a goodness, this PR makes the immutable attachments as immutable. So that would further going forward simplify the caching for us. So if our attachment code is fetched, we can simply cache it and don't have to invalidate or check for if it is updated or not. So the status here is the PR is created and the review is pending on that side. Just a brief implementation detail. So going forward now, the attachment name would become more like an encoded string, where there would be a scheme which would tell what is the storage of the attachment, and then the value or the path of the URI would determine the attachment name. So there's a support for inlining attachments. So we'll talk about in the next slide. The CouchDB attachments would become like, the scheme would become couch, and the UUID would be used as that attachment name instead of current simple names. With S3, the ID would be more like a path, entity path plus the attachment name. All these changes would be backward compatible in terms of you would be able to switch to the newer scheme, and the older scheme would still work for the existing constructs. So it should not pose a problem in terms of backward compatibility.
Chetan, so I assume that if someone wants to implement a GitHub connector, that would also work, right? To pull the code directly from GitHub.
Yes, so you can implement, so the next few slides will talk about attachment store SPI, and the SPI implementation can fetch the blob from wherever it is present.
Sweet.
Okay, so attachment inlining. So currently we make a distinction between how the code is handled. So the manifest runtime determines if for that kind of runtime, whether the code is treated as literal value in the document or as attachment. And we only use attachments for Java runtime. There's a PR open to convert everything to attachment, but that's still in works, or it has some areas to be worked upon. But what would be better would be to support attachment inlining as an inherent attachment store implementation. So instead of manifest determining whether the attachment is inline as a document property or stored in an attachment store, it's the attachment store's responsibility which would determine based on some configuration that if the attachment code is less than, let's say, 16 KB or 100 KB, then just encode it as a base 64 encoded string in the attachment name itself, and instead of storing it in an attachment store. And if it is greater than that, then store it in the attachment store. So this PR addresses that. So the work is done in the branch. It's currently blocked on the earlier PR around attachment handling. So once that is done, the PR can be created for this work also. Next is the attachment store SPI. This would be a new SPI which would be used internally by the artifact store. So this is not something which to be used by layers above artifact store, but it's an implementation detail for the artifact store to make use of this SPI. So again, it comes with a canonical test suite and a memory attachment store implementation to validate the contract. It would support a hybrid storage. So let's say if you have already running setup using Couch, where the attachments are stored in Couch, you can switch to the, let's say, S3 attachment store, and it would ensure that the older attachments are still fetched from Couch and only the new attachments are fetched from S3. So you don't have to have a one-time big migration. You can do a lazy migration of the existing attachment. Again, status work is done in PR 3453. This might need to be reworked based on the other attachment pull requests we have. Next is the S3 attachment store. This one is also implemented. So it uses Alpaca S3 connector, and it can work with the IBM Cloud Object Storage also, because that supports the S3 protocol. It has the unit testing support also. This work is also done in the branch and is again logged on the other attachment pull request we have, which is pending review. So that is more about the current work done so far. As a next step, we need to discuss a couple of aspects. We would create mailing threads on these going forward, as how to test the various artifact store implementation, especially the integration test for, let's say, S3 or any other attachment store implementation, or Cosmos DB attachment store. How do we package the artifact store implementations? So some of the artifact store implementation may pull in other third-party libraries like Mongo or Cosmos. Should we package them in the out-of-the-box Docker image, or they are more provided as add-on? So that we need to discuss. We need to do some work in the WSK admin area, which is currently like a tooling which is hardwired to work with CouchDB. So we would have to make it extensible so that it can be used with other artifact stores. Yeah, for the Mongo artifact store, the work is done. It's just that once we have the baseline pull request merge, we can have a pull request for that. And yeah, the pending work on Cosmos artifact store. So in summary, there are around 6 PRs plus branches already being worked upon, and they are pending reviews, especially on 35M7, which is a big pull request, and 3502. So need some eyes on those pull requests so that they can get reviewed, and so that the other parts can be merged. So that if this can be done like in next 1 week, that would help us to merge the other or create pull requests for the other feature work being done.
I think in chat, William asked if you could post the slides and provide a link.
Yes. Okay. I forgot the link. Let me share the.
I think there's also a question from Daisy that just popped in on the chat about as well.
No, the idea would be that there would be a single storage, which storage that the deployment can decide, but either you would be running with Couch, or you would be running with Mongo, or you would be running with Cosmos. So would not be a hybrid storage. But for the attachments, just to enable easier progression, we can have like a hybrid storage for some time.
What's the stack that you're looking at using in production? Is that Mongo with S3. So there's a lot of combinations you can do with the table that you have. I guess like some is useful for dev, for development. But what's your production stack?
So the one we are targeting would be Cosmos with either S3 attachment store or Azure Blob Storage at the attachment store. Mongo one is more because it's more as a developer part, it's easy to develop against and as just another option against Couch. But for at least for our case, it would be Cosmos and Azure.
So I know don't know much, but I know a little bit about the Cosmos and the MongoDB. I know that if you have a MongoDB, it's easy to quote unquote use Cosmos, but it's not like a native API. But if you can have Cosmos native API, non the MongoDB shim or APIs, then it's a more native API. Which version you're looking into? Like Mongo API happens to use Cosmos, Mongo's API is shim. Is that clear or not? I don't know.
Yeah, so Cosmos DB supports MongoDB via protocol. The problem is if a DB is created using for MongoDB via protocol, it can't use the Cosmos DB API. For us to make all the good use of Cosmos DB features, we would be having a native Cosmos DB implementation.
Okay. So the MongoDB is more for open source dev?
Yes. It was more for me to do a quick prototype without depending on any hosted service. It simplifies testing and those things.
The reason I asked is in all these open source projects, we're running this stuff in production, but also doing the open source development. So just something to think about, that focus of what you have in production. Because sometimes if somebody's trying to do the MongoDB in production and they run into problems and they ask us questions and they open issues, then no one, you or me or no one can help them in production with MongoDB, because you're using Cosmos, I'm using CouchDB Cloud, and then the poor person is trying to use MongoDB in production and they have performance problems or functional problems. So
makes sense. I think that's
if you're going to do it, we have to maintain it, right? Maintain and test it.
Yeah. So I think what we can have is a Mongo as a separate, probably may live in my custom fork, and later if we see some interest from other people wanting to use it, probably
in production they can help out. So it's always better that if somebody running in production, they can help out. Like, yes, I know about that problem, we hit it, we can help you. Versus, you can use MySQL, and it works on MySQL in my laptop, but.
I understand. So we can have it as an example, and it would live in my GitHub fork, and that can serve as example. But later, only on demand, if people express interest on the mailing list and willing to use it, we can take a call.
Yeah, that's why I was asking about which protocol you were going with, the shim MongoDB or just native Cosmos, so you can use the native features. Okay, good.
Okay, so
and I guess you were asking about testing. I guess we already discussed, like, let's see if Travis can scale. How many parallel business
so,
and core, right? If stuff can be in core in one repo, maybe that's a good thing. And in the past we didn't do it because of Travis and one build and 50 minutes. But if we can scale Travis to do build parallels and test different SPIs, I don't see any problems. Everything being in one place. I mean, we're all family, so that's doing in one repo. But.
Yeah.
Roderick says. Anyway, yeah. Have the right to change.
This is really good stuff, Chetan. Thanks for doing all this work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over to you, Matt, to talk about WSK deploy.
Yeah, so Pretty deserves credit for most of these changes, but I think that we basically figured out where Whisk deploy sits in the tool chain. So the big thing is, I mentioned we removed interactive mode. We had some concept of a report mode, but we changed it to a dash preview switch. So on any of the main commands, you can actually preview. It's basically a dry run. We won't actually deploy or undeploy or anything like that. You can actually see a listing of what we would do. So that's cool. Export command is completed. So you now can, we can actually resolve all dependencies you bring into your project or a reference and repackage them into and bring them in under your namespaces. That's cool. We're trying to match the CLI for functionality. We now support the web key instead of web export in all cases. We improved our API gateway support and simplified things for the user in terms of if you reference actions in your sequences in your API gateway or sequences, we automatically mark them web if they're part of a API gateway schema path. We support Docker native now, and we added a bunch of unit tests to show that. We support conductor actions. We support inline code, so if you don't want to reference a JavaScript or Swift file, you can actually just put your code in line. We support multiple interpolation. We supported interpolation before, but now you can have multiple interpolations per variable, and we'll resolve them. We also added double dollar notation, so if you want to preserve the dollar notation to pass your code, you can use double dollar notation, so you can handle it yourself in your action if you want to. So we pull that from the environment. And we add the concept of default package. So if you really want to put your stuff into your base namespace, you can use the default keyword to do so. So that's the quick summary of changes. But we had a small, we released as 0.93. We had a small bug fix where we did some things on sequences for web actions, but we plan to put a release this Friday as well. So that'll get picked up as well as some other documentation changes that document all these things. That's about it.
Matt, maybe a quick question. When you say supports conductor actions, does that mean adding the conductor annotation or something deeper?
Conductor annotation, yes. Yeah, the next step would be actually just work, we work with Lionel offline. I think that we need coordination going forward, perhaps to represent conductor schema, if you will. So right now it's just annotation.
Thank you.
Matt, will it use FSH to deploy compositions as well?
No, it does not. I mean, I'm just thinking about, we talked about having a tool chain supported in West Deploy, but that's not on our radar right now. But it'd be cool. Yeah, it'd be awesome.
FSH compiles your app, and then you can use Whisk deploy to deploy, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm thinking of, we a lot of this refactoring and things, and we're doing a lot of refactoring now too. So now that we removed and figure out where we sit in the tool chain, Pretty's doing a lot of refactoring to simplify our code, and our code's really tightening up. It really feels good. I think that would be good to have like a gestalt view of where all our tools fit in the tool chain, with FSH being one of them, and how we call each other and use each other and function with each other. So we don't have that dissertation or that description anyplace. So, but yeah, if you have ideas, just submit them to Whisk Deploy and we prioritize them, with all our work. We want to add new functionality. I think that's where we get developers, is through improved tooling.
So just a quick comment on this. I mean, there's a difference between conductor actions and compositions. Conductor actions are just actions with an annotation. There's nothing difficult in supporting that. Composition is different. So, they need to be pre-processed, but there's a standalone tool for that. There's no need for the full shelf of that. There's a compose command in the composer package that makes it possible to do that, and it's precisely meant to do the one thing that the Whisk CLI doesn't do. So it could be delegated to that.
Yep. Orchestration of the deployment. I don't know, Dragos, somebody else was asking about GitHub deploying actions, or maybe at one point Adobe was asking about, or Ben, I don't know who it was, but somebody was asking how easy it is to deploy or put your actions in a Git repo and deploy them from Git. That's some time ago and recently got updated to be in sync, is the package deploy. Package deploy is just an action that takes a Git URL, and if you put a Whisk deploy manifest file in the root on a folder, it would basically it already has Whisk deploy tool inside, and then it would git clone your repo and then Whisk deploy your Git repo. So that's a package we are using in production. Currently, we're using it from the UI in IBM Cloud, but it's a building block that we use. So people are free to use it or free to enhance it.
Yeah, and yeah, we coordinate with Belinda typically. So when we release on Fridays, we ping her on Slack and say, hey, we rebuilt, and she usually picks up and rebuilds the package for us.
Yeah, and we bumped. Yeah, so there was a bump this week with 0.93. That was good. I was out, so I came back and it was updated.
Yeah, I also like to echo what also Matt was saying and Carlos, that it's Whisk deploy is now, it feels as very mature and very nice. We have been using it, and I recently used it to install a full-blown catalog even. And that's why I added an issue in the OpenWhisk catalog to switch everything to Whisk deploy, because I think it supports most of the things right now, instead of relying on those bash scripts to install the catalog.
You don't like bash? It worked for 2 years. Fine. Now I don't like YAML. I like JSON. So let's move everything to JSON.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, we started trying to, capture code patterns on the IBM code site for OpenWhisk, and we decided the same thing, is that we decided as a group to use Whisk deploy for deployment. Yeah. So, and bash is an alternative we list, but Whisk deploy is the mainstream. So we want people to understand the pattern that we're trying to deploy, and we're less about running a bash script and what's composing a bunch of CLI stuff, so they can focus on the pattern. And I'll let you know that, in terms of release stuff, I know that Vincent usually gives us an update, but we're getting serious. I talked to Carlos, and I'm going to start on the CWiki when I get some time, putting the Apache maturity matrix, model matrix on our CWiki, and start filling it out so we can all get a view of where we sit. But in terms of the actual release repo and producing the binaries and things like that, Vincent looks like he's almost done with binary production. Now we're actually looking at the notice files, and Daisy's created some nice tooling to help us bootstrap the notice files. You perhaps saw some pull requests. But we've been debating about what goes in and out on the mail list. And I think that we decided what our rules are. So Daisy was going to post to the release repo what our process was for deciding what goes in and what our rules are. And so we can point to those rules uniformly.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, we automate everything. Makes coding releases very, very easy for anyone to do it, and we can move fast.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we are near the time also. Volunteers for the next call, April 28th.
25th?
25th, yes, April 25th.
Did you want to see if James wants to moderate? I know he's sick today.
Yeah, I think he mentioned on the Slack that he would be there for the next. So I think
right, I'll pencil him in.
Yeah. Okay, I think then we can close the meeting now. Thanks, and see you next time.